Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe, addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and each year we do several programs, as you know, who have been following us on books and authors, and we are going to do that again today and next week. And the book that we're going to be featuring is just an exciting one, and it's just come out. It's called South to Alaska. I have a copy of it right here, and it's a wonderful humanistic story about a gentleman who built a boat in Arkansas and wound up through the Panama Canal and into Alaska. And the subtitle of this book, South to Alaska, is From the Heartland of America to the Heart of a Dream. And we are very fortunate to have the daughter of the man who did this and who was the author of the book. I welcome to the program Nancy Owens Barnes. And our guest, she holds a BA degree from Vermont College of Norwich University, and her bachelor's degree is in the field of creative writing. In addition to this book, she has also published in such publications as We Arkansas, Decision Magazine, and literary journals such as The MacGuffin and also The Lyric. Our guest lives in Idaho. We're very fortunate to that fact, and thank you for being here today and again next week to discuss your exciting book. It's just a great story to tell.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate being here. Thanks.
And I'm so pleased to have our two regular panelists, Janelle Burks, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and also Erna Reinhardt, who is Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College. And traditionally, as we do, Janelle will ask the first question.
Welcome to the program, Nancy. It's going to be fun talking about your book, but first, the viewers may wish to know a little bit more about you. And so can you tell us about your background, how you became interested in writing, and then a little bit about the Idaho Writers League, to which you belong. I think Tony gave a background, but it was a rather general background. So how did you become interested in writing?
Basically, I really began writing because I wanted to tell my father's story. Even though I had vague visions of maybe writing one day, I really wanted to give my father credit for what he had done. And at one point I thought, well, maybe I can write an article. But I really needed to learn more about the craft of writing. So in 1993, I signed up for writing classes at Anchorage, University of Alaska at Anchorage. And I've been studying and writing ever since. And I belong to the Idaho Writers League and also the Pacific Northwest Writers Association. I've been with the Idaho Writers League probably 3 or 4 years, and they've been a great help. It's a great group. We have our conference coming up at the end of the month, and I'm going to be promoting my book there. And but they give a lot of opportunity for your work to be critiqued, and it's a great work. Group to belong to if you're working on the craft of writing and want to make your writing better.
So if you were giving advice to someone who's a new young writer or even an older writer, you might say that it would be a good idea to join a group like the Idaho Writers League or wherever they happen to live. There probably is a writers group.
Oh, absolutely.
And these folks help you critique and also help you know about how to publish and so forth.
Yes, and they all know how to do that. You know, no one's attacked. You know, everyone gives very constructive criticism when you need help with your work, and so it's a real good environment to be in. And even if you're not working on something at the time, you know, it's nice to network with other writers and see what they're doing and have people ask questions too. So it's very good to for anyone that wants to work on the writing to get involved with those groups.
Thank you.
Erna Reinhardt.
Nancy, your book, South to Alaska, is about your father's trip on his boat. Do you think it was more difficult to write about a family member, or was it easier to use a family member as your topic?
I think it was easier, probably, even though I've never written fiction and tried to make up characters. But even if it was nonfiction in another person, I mean, I had access to my dad. I mean, I could pick his brain, and I did that so much that when he started repeating things to me, I realized, well, I probably got all I can get out of him, you know, all I could remember. No, I found it very easy, and Dad was very willing, even though he was a very quiet person, and it was very hard. He just wasn't in him to talk about his accomplishments, so you kind of had to dig and pull information out of him. But once I started writing down the story, I think he was glad that he could really open up, and because he kind of kept the story, and all the bad things and the good things that happened to him were inside for a long time. He just really didn't share, well, probably with Mom and some to the family, but I think it felt real good for him to just kind of open up and, yes, this is what happened. I'm so glad someone really has an interest and wants to write all this down. So it was easy in that sense.
Awesome. Share with us about how long it took you to write the book from start to finish. For those that may be thinking about writing a book, and they may think they may be able to do it in a year or 6 months, share with us how long it took.
Well, I'm sure it varies with everyone, but in my case, I began seriously writing the book in the spring of '98, and I felt like I completed the book in the spring of '06. So that's 8 years later. But I need to subtract some time from that because there was a lot of time where I was submitting or people were reading the book for me and I was waiting for their comments back, where I really wasn't working on the book. And then there were 2 years, 1 year where I was ill and I did no work on the book, and there was 1 year, the year we moved from Anchorage to Priest River, northern Idaho. Took us about a year to make that move and get settled to where I was writing again. So basically, probably about 5 years it took me where I was really writing and revising and working on the book.
Over the years, as we do programs with authors, we ask a lot of these kind of questions, and one that always intrigues me is because it's different from author to author. In your writing, you do it on a regular basis, or are you a morning writer, an afternoon, or weekends, or when does it fit best in your thinking and your creativity to, and under what environment do you write?
Well, I'm not working outside the home now, but I do still have a high schooler at home, and of course my husband in the evening. So I really take advantage of the quiet time during the day. I don't necessarily have any fixed time, but just I kind of work it around everything else. Once in a while, though, if I've got some writing problem I'm working on and it's in my head, it'll wake me up like 3 in the morning, and I say, well, I just as well get up and write as lay here wide-eyed and try to go back to sleep, because it's not going to happen. So I'll just get up and write then. So there's really no set time as far as process. I do carry around a little digital recorder with me when I'm not at home to put down thoughts and ideas, so I have those when I go back. But as far as at home, there's no strict time. I just kind of work it around life, And
for different people, it's different. Sometimes some writers, they only do morning, or night, whatever. But I want us to delve into the book, because that's what our viewers, of course, will be most interested in. And I introduced it already, South to Alaska. Now, your parents were living in Arkansas, and if you'll start at that point and tell us about how did your father get this idea? And there's a lot of commitment. I believe it took him 3 years to construct the boat, and we haven't told our viewers it was called Red Dog. So tell us about how it all started, and his idea, and what he did in Arkansas before he left on this trip.
Okay, well, the idea really started back when he was 10 years old. I don't know if you want to go back to that part. He was a boy in Capitol Hill, Oklahoma, where he was born, in that area, which is right by Oklahoma City. Today it's just kind of mixed into the city. It's a neighborhood now. And he saw a photograph in his 4th grade class of a picture in Alaska in his geography book, and it was a small cabin covered in snow, and he got then the idea, wouldn't that be neat? He always kind of liked to be out fishing and hunting and traveling around, the neighborhood and creeks and stuff, rather than being in the streets playing with the boys anyway. But so he kind of had that leaning anyway. And when he saw that photo, he thought, wow, I would really like to live up north, and what would that be like, And so that photograph kind of sparked that dream. It stayed with him for forever. And the Red Dog was actually the second boat he built. to take to Alaska. The first one had been a few years earlier. He built, it was a smaller boat, and but to backtrack a little bit, he got the idea for a boat on a vacation to Alaska in 1961. And we were in southeast Alaska, and he saw a cabin in a cove on one of the inlets, and it had a boat outside there. And he thought, wouldn't that be a great way to live, you know? And he had learned boat building during the war in the Seattle area. So he knew about the structure of boats, and so he thought, you know, I can build a boat and take it to Alaska. So as soon as we got back from that trip in '61, that fall he started building a boat named the Nancy N. And he spent also 3 years building that boat. But some things happened. One of my brothers went to Vietnam, and Dad got a new job that was just too hard to pass up. And he started thinking, you know, if I'm going to go that far in the ocean, I might need a little bigger boat. So he decided to sell that boat, and it turned out that boat got destroyed in a hurricane by a barge hitting it a year or so later. So they made another trip to Alaska in 1968, and they explored southeast Alaska, and they landed in Ketchikan. That's a place that they just love. My mom liked the cooler weather anyway. She was born in the Northwest, and she liked the cooler climate. So that Ketchikan, they decided that's where we're going to go back to. And so again, when they went back home, that fall is when Dad started building the Red Dog.
And what year was that?
'68.
And he was about what age then?
He was 52.
So at 52, he decided, now it's time to continue this dream.
Yeah.
And it took, was it 3 years to build this?
Correct.
boat?
Yeah.
And this is one that's the Red Dog that he would take on the trip.
Right. He completed it in 1971, and that's the year they launched the boat.
So I assume that during the 3 years he was constructing the boat, he still had another job and work, and he
Yeah.
did this when,
Yeah.
when time permitted him.
He worked every evening after work and all day Saturday and Sunday over that 3-year period.
He
to
had
get
that kind
done.
of dedication commitment.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Every afternoon and then every weekend.
Yeah.
Chanel Burke.
I want to talk a little bit about the Red Dog itself, and size-wise, how big was it?
It's 47 feet.
47 feet in length.
Mhm.
And did it have a color? I think that we have probably some pictures that are either have been shown or are going to be shown. And what color was it?
It was white. It had a blue top, and then whatever paint they put on the bottom for the ocean, I believe that ended up blue also. But they used to put some kind of copper special paint on the bottom, and then I guess he painted over that with the blue. But
What kind of accommodations were there, so to speak? Did it
Well,
have a table? And
part of the time, Mom
bed?
was going to be on this boat, so he wanted to make it very nice. And so it had a tub in the head downstairs, and a regular little bathroom downstairs in the front portion. Oh, the picture's gone, but in the front portion of the boat, there were beds down there. The wheelhouse was up above. And in the main cabin, Mom made curtains for the windows, and they put a little wood stove in there because they knew they would be traveling in cool weather as they were going. And this was going to be their place to stay because they didn't know where they were going to live when they got to Alaska. So it was going to be their home, for a while until they could get a home. So
she was supportive of this whole endeavor.
yes, she was. It got difficult because just the mechanics over the years of trying to get this done and getting to Alaska was wear and tear on everybody. It got to be because of the problems they ran into. But yes, she shared his dream of living in Alaska because she loved the Northwest and she loved Ketchikan where they ended up. So yeah, she just didn't want to go on the ocean. She was afraid of the big water.
She must have had moments when she said, "Why don't we just take a flight?"
Yeah.
Move there.
Exactly.
Instead of going down to Panama and coming all the way up.
Yeah, exactly.
Your father liked doing things the more challenging way.
Yeah.
Erna Reinhardt.
Nancy, your dad sounds like he was a very handy man in terms of being able to use his hands and not only build the boat, but all of the mechanical things that had to be done. Was he also a boater? Did he have experience on the water at all?
He had been on the Washington State ferries, and we had a rowboat on our pond in Oklahoma, but he had never been on the ocean in a boat. So this was very new in that sense also. He had never been on a boat in the ocean other than just the Puget Sound ferries and that sort of thing. So, yeah, this was a totally new thing for him.
He's very, very brave.
Mm-hmm.
So it took him 3 years to build it. Did he
Mhm.
have help along that way?
Once in a while, a neighbor would come and help out. But my dad was someone who just did things himself. He never asked us kids to help because this was their dream, and they kind of let us be and to do what we wanted to do. They never got us involved in making the kids work on the boat or anything like that. He did it nearly entirely himself.
Now, this was probably before the internet. If you were going to do something like this now, you could go on the internet. You could get all kinds of information and help in terms of how to build the boat and how to chart the waters and all those kinds of things. So without the internet and that as a resource, how did he plan his trip?
Well, he learned to build boats, as I mentioned, when he worked for a shipyard in Seattle area, and they built tugs and barges for the war. So, and that really impacted him because he used to tell me he was very proud of the fact that he'd worked with the men in the loft on the drawings, and then he would watch the tug being built below, and he said those were such smart men. So that made a huge impact on him. So he knew about structures of boat and how to make them work. And he got the plans for the Red Dog from a fellow that worked for him. He modified the plans to make it a little larger and use one engine instead of two, and that sort of thing. But that was his experience with building boats. And then he built the Nancy Inn, which was his first boat. And so by then, he was getting pretty good at it.
I'm going to ask our wonderful staff to put up some slides we have about this construction. I know that we have a slide of the actual work he's doing on it, and I think that's just a really good visual if they'll put that up. And that, here it is up there now, that was in the early stages of the development of the boat.
Right. He began in the fall of '68, so that may have been, the end of the year or into the next year there when he got
Now,
that
is
far.
he doing this at home?
It's in our backyard.
In your
yes,
backyard?
in Hartford, Arkansas, and which surprised many people when they'd come over the hill to by our house and see this big ocean-going vessel.
What kind of development are they doing at that home?
Yeah.
And then the next slide is a picture of him, or a photograph of him. I think that, well, there's one in there too in the construction, but I think they'll put up the next one and we can see this is him with background of the water. Now, where was this taken
This
at?
is along the inside passage along British Columbia. This is after Mom joined him on the boat in Bellingham, and they're going from Bellingham to Ketchikan at
So
this
she
point.
comes down at this point, and then she takes that photo.
She took that photo. Yeah, I have no photos of Dad's trip because he was not the picture taker in the family, and he didn't even have a camera. So all of his trip around, there are no photographs. But yeah, Mom took this picture at Wilkinson
And
Channel.
there's the end result of his work on at the boat.
That's the actual launching of the boat in 1971 on the Arkansas River at Fort Smith.
Now that produced a question immediately for me, and that was, once he finished it in the backyard, there is a challenge of getting it from that to the water,
Yeah.
assuming your home it was not at the edge of the water. How did
No,
he get the boat from the home?
We're about 40 miles from here
Okay.
on a little windy road. A house mover on a lowboy
Hello, boy.
trailer, pulled into our backyard, and they did whatever they needed to drag it onto the trailer, and they took it all the way to Fort Smith and
That's where he launched.
launched.
Now, there were plans at some point, if I understood correctly, for your mother to go along very temporarily because she didn't like the open
Right.
ocean. But did both you and your mother go for the first stages?
Right, from after they launched it, that was in September '71. They had to sell their house in Hartford and get all their stuff taken care of. And in November, we left Fort Smith on the boat, on the Red Dog. That was the start to Alaska.
And it was the three
it
of
was,
you.
Yes, my father, myself, and my mother. I was 22 at the time. And we went from from Fort Smith to Galveston. And at that point, Mom was going to fly back to Arkansas to stay with my brother until we brought the boat around, and then she had always planned to meet up in Bellingham with
Right.
my father and go from there. So no, she didn't want to go in the ocean.
Now, when she exited the boat, did you stay on a while longer
I did, because initially my father and I were going to go.
on the whole trip?
Right. We had no idea what we were getting into and what we were facing.
So
We
you
were
have the
all
same
fairly-
character as your father. You were very exploratory.
Well, I was kind of, I had finished working, I worked in Montana at Glacier Park for
Yeah.
a couple summers. I had just gotten back from there. I hadn't started a new job. And so, okay, I'll go on the boat, you know. And but Dad and I got in trouble between Galveston and Port Isabel. We ran into some problems there. I don't know if you want me to go in that
You could
too much.
mention that, yes.
Okay. The boat started running in half speed, and Dad couldn't get it fixed to go full speed, and that was a problem because that would run us too slow and put us in the hurricane season, and he didn't
Yeah.
want to travel during this season.
Right.
And the other problem was we were docked along the Intercoastal Canal on a foggy afternoon, and a tug and its barge crunched us against that dock. They were going to dock there too. They didn't see us, so that caused a little bit of damage to the boat. But Dad was real concerned about the inner workings of the boat, things he couldn't see, and he didn't want to start across the ocean
Right.
without making sure that was okay. And there were some other problems. It was a time in Central America, there was a lot of political unrest, and he had heard stories around the marina about American boats being hijacked and that sort of thing. It didn't bother him too much, but I was his only daughter, and to take me through something that might be dangerous, he didn't want to do that. He was afraid something would happen to him. I'd be stranded on the ocean or in a foreign port or something. So, and that with the mechanical problems, he said, you know, we need to go back to Galveston. I need to check out the boat and get it running good and think this